Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Elemental Entrepreneurship Podcast. I'm your host, Sarah. I'm so happy you're here with us today. I have a really fun, exciting episode. I can already tell this conversation is going to be good. I have Lexi D'Angelo on the pod. Lexi has been a leader in the coaching industry for nearly a decade and achieved the seven-figure business dream. But when she became a mama, she realized that true success can't be measured in dollars and vanity metrics. Life is about meaningful connection, unapologetic expression, wild joy, sacred purpose, finding magic in the mundane, and of course, epic sex, my girl. She burned her seven-figure empire to the ground and has been in the liminal and mysterious waters of the sacred pause. She's prioritizing her highest expression and making sure her top priorities aren't lost in the daily grind, but the stars that guide her days. Right now, she has no niche. If she's living it, she's oversharing it, whether it's mamahood, relationships, purpose, spirituality, home, lifestyle, or her latest maple matcha. She's serving it hot. Lexi, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me, Sarah. I'm so excited to be here.
You're so welcome. I used to do people's intros in the intro, like not with in front of them, but I've discovered the magic of reading people's bios out loud while they have to just sit there and hear their own accolades because I think it's like kind of uncomfortable to hear your own bio. Like I think all of us have a little inner cringe at our own credits, but it's also I think so good for us to just sit there and be
Yeah,
like, "It is me and I am the bomb."
I actually loved listening to that because I feel like not for once, but I'm in this space where there's just so much possibility. And I think, well, this could be like a whole deep dive, but I think a lot of my worth was rooted in who I was as a business owner and my success and my accomplishment and my achievements. And so I've been learning to be like, who am I without that seven-figure business? Who am I just as I am? And it's been a very humbling and interesting experiment and experience.
Oh, I'm so excited. I'm like itching to dive into a million things already. But the important things before we start, because the kids will want to know your big three and your human design type and authority.
Okay, yes, my Sag Sun, Aries Moon, and Virgo Rising. I am a projector with emotional authority.
Okay, fire and earth, baby. Love it. And projector with okay, I'm so excited. Projectors, listen up because to I think to run a business, even the size of the businesses that you have run as a projector, is a special set of skills because I am best friends with many projectors and they're like, I'm a generator
Mm-hmm.
and it seems hard to have, my best friend is like, I have a 3 to 4 hour cap on things I can do in a day. And that includes life things. So like
Mm.
I can have a day where I can like run errands and clean my house and have a doctor's appointment, but I can't also work for 3 to 4 hours on that day because those are all the hours I have.
Yeah, people are really confused when I say I'm a projector. And I mean, I have a lot of days like that, but when I get like really into something, it's I go down a whole different rabbit hole of space and time, and I could literally do it nonstop. So I don't know. I don't think it's the typical projector situation, but
I
I've
think
also had a lot of, yeah, there's a lot of, there's a
that
lot of,
fire earth combo is probably very helpful on the days that your projector tank runs out. You're like, I'm doing it anyway. And then the Virgo
yeah,
like, dedication to completion.
yeah, and a lot of Capricorn in my chart too. So there's like, yeah, there's a lot of interesting stuff at play
I
here.
love this. I will climb this mountain. Capricorn women too are amazing. Okay, so everyone, you've placed this astrologically and human design wise.
Mhm, mhm.
So the reason I asked Lexi here today, and I love that what you wrote in on the form is so about liminal space, right? Because we're coming into fall in the northern hemisphere, fall and winter. I've been thinking a lot about like Persephone and underworld journeys and liminal space and intentional liminal space. I always think of the end of the year, especially as intentional liminal space.
Mm-hmm.
And first of all, liminal space is, for those of you who are not familiar with that term, just in case, it's the space in between things.
Yes.
And I think in our culture, and I think under capitalism, I think that liminal space is terrifying. Like everyone really wants us to have an answer all the time for what our plans are and what we're doing next and where we're headed. And like in every movie, like liminal spaces are a montage. Like they're very fast. And in
Mhm.
real life, the experience of intentional in between and just hanging out in the space between one thing ending and another thing even revealing itself, not starting, because there is something different about I know what I'm going to do next, but I haven't started yet. Being
Yes.
in like, I don't even know, and I'm sitting in that is so terrifying for most people.
Yes.
And when I first reached out to you to be on the show, what my pitch was, and I was so excited that you answered, was I've been watching your business for years. And from the outside, I've seen you have a website business and a witchy business school and doing like relationship and sex coaching. I've watched you become a mom. And I've watched you pivot publicly
Mhm.
over and over and reinvent yourself over and over. And from the outside, it seems effortless, unapologetic, authentic. You're just like, hey, this is what we're doing now, kids. Come on.
Yes.
And I think so many people are so scared to do that. And so I'm so excited to have you here today to talk about maybe, first of all, what that experience was like on the inside versus from watching it. And then
Yeah.
how you decide when the time is to burn down a 7-figure business and just do whatever you want.
Yes. Oh my gosh. Okay. There's my mind sees 20 different paths that we can go down in this conversation right now. I think the first thread here is yes, it's gooey and crunchy and messy and all of that for sure. And we can totally get into that. And I am somebody who is allergic to doing anything that's not authentic. Like I cannot, and this has been the reason for a lot of pivots. And there's been some really big wake up calls that have like kind of shooken me up and been like, okay, come on, like let's see the signs here. But I will say it's really, really fucking hard for me to passionately talk about something and show up online if I am not living and breathing it. So if it's not something that feels like it's lighting a fire in me, that I really am embodied in or that matters, I'm almost repulsed. Like I just it's so hard to put my energy forth in a way and then it doesn't work. Like it just doesn't work. And things fall flat and the money stops coming in or all these different things just kind of go flatlined. So I think that and sometimes that's actually not even the case. Sometimes it seems to be working on the surface, but just deeper down I know that it's just out of alignment and integrity for me. But I think that I've just learned throughout so many pivots is I've become so practiced in the pivot that I do trust that liminal space. I know that after winter, spring comes. And honestly, this has been the longest winter of them all. And I feel like it's almost been 2 years of wintering and like maybe some signs of spring and then whoop, nope. And it's okay. And I'm not pushing it right now. And yeah, there's so much more to share in there, but I think that's the first thread for me.
I love this so much. And I relate deeply to the way that I always say it is I'm 100% on board or I'm 0% on board. It's also the reason that I like can't have a job.
Mm,
I say all the time, I'm like, I'm not an entrepreneur because I'm so entrepreneurial and I'm so into leadership. I'm an entrepreneur because I'm unemployable. When
mm,
I was younger, I would just walk out of jobs. Like, and I would like the job, but the second someone like introduces a plan I don't think is a good plan, or like I'm not 100% on board with a leadership decision or a direction, or I think something's stupid, I'm like, no, I'm leaving. And like,
I'm out. Bye.
I was like that in elementary school. Like they'd be like, it's math time. And I'd be like, no, I'm going to read. Like, I don't care. And I think there's a personality type there, and I'm also like a neurodivergent person, and so there's just like this like I if I'm not all the way into it, I just I'm so checked out that I can't make myself.
Yes.
And I think that the thing that's coming up for me right now is like making ourselves do things, making ourselves push through and override our inner knowing, making ourselves push through and override discomfort is kind of a normal state of being for most people most of the time, to the point where like the idea that they could follow their own discomfort or check out and be like, oh, that means it's time to do something different and I'm just allowed to, is so foreign.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it's so interesting. My husband jokes around that he's like one of the very few things that has lasted all these years. And it's, it's so interesting because there is something to be said for being, devoted to something and reinventing your relationship with it and all that. And honestly, like I've tried to do that in various instances and it has worked, but I think at a certain point, like when and I think we're all just wired differently. Like there are some people who really can just constantly reinvent their relationship to their business or that thing that they're talking about, find a new angle, make it more personal, make it more whatever. And I tried. I honestly like I tried and it just didn't work for me. And one other thing I'll say is during this time, what although in the past I've been like, yep, I'm done. Like, all right, next thing. I had like a really big health scare that happened, and I honestly didn't know what the state of my future was going to be. And so that scared the shit out of me. And I was just thinking to myself constantly, like, how can I be pouring so much of my time, my energy, my money, etc., into this business when it just feels like I'm bleeding out and I'm not. Yes, I was being poured into in some ways, but for the most part, it just felt like a huge giving and like energy leak. And I was just like, what's important to me right now? And it was my health, it was my family, it was the people who mattered most to me. And I really had to, yeah, it was such a hard decision in so many ways to shut down Taboo because there was so much potency in it. It changed so many people's lives. The team members that I had on my team were like for life. They were basically like, we are going to be in this with you for life, no matter what. And getting that in this industry is really hard. So I was saying goodbye to so much magic and just, yeah, things that I had only dreamed of creating, but where I was in my life at the time, just it felt like to me there was no other choice but to shut down the doors and to really prioritize self and family, and then to allow myself to just be in this space where I wasn't really holding anyone else or anything and really could cultivate that for myself and my family. But it was a really, really hard decision, but ultimately it felt so, so true for me.
Okay, there's two things I want to touch on. Sorry, of course, my cat chooses the moment I unmute to do something loud.
I love it. She wants to be heard too.
She really wants to be involved. Yeah, just sidebar about what's happening with the cat situation. If you're listening on the pod, is that I'm sitting somewhere different, and you know, if you have animals, that this is now the most interesting thing that's ever happened for me to be. I moved a chair, and so the whole room is different and must be explored.
Exactly. Must be.
Must be explored. Okay, so devotion. I love that word. It's one of my favorite words. I have a little thing that a student made me that sits on my altar, and it's one of my mantras, and it's devotion creates miracles. I am a
Mm,
fan of devotion. I sit with the word and the concept, and the what am I devoted to? What am I in service to? Is a question I ask myself all the time. And it's a question that I ask myself also as part of a decision making process. What am I devoted to in this moment? What am I in service to? And are the choices that I'm making and the actions that I'm taking actually aligned with what I'm devoted to and what I'm in service to? And again, back to this idea of like when we override our inner knowing or we don't believe that we can follow our feelings, there's two things. One is like there's a difference in texture between I am still completely devoted to this relationship or this business or this artistic practice or this concept. I'm still completely in devotion to this. And I'm going through a lull or a rut or a hard day and I don't feel like it, right? Like that happens. And on
Yes.
those times, you know what you need to do to manage yourself to either be like, hey, it's okay, I'm just going to be in my rut, but I know I don't want to quit. I'm just in a rut.
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
that feels different than the like, oh, I am no longer committed to this thing being the pathway of expression for this devotion.
Yes.
Right? Like, or the thing I'm really devoted to deep down is not this business as it stands, it's following my creative expression. The thing I'm really devoted to deep down is being of service to my community, and my community changed. And so now this business isn't an accurate representation of who I'm in service to, right?
Hmm.
And so I think devotion is one of those words like discipline that can be weaponized to mean stick to things you're no longer really into
Yes.
versus like this beautiful internal check-in of is this still an accurate representation of my devotion, and knowing sometimes you can be super devoted to something and in a rut, and that doesn't mean you're no longer into it, you're just in a rut, and that happens.
Exactly. And honestly, I thought that that was the case because even before shutting down the doors, there had been multiple instances within the business where I was like in a rut or feeling that funk. And I was like, no, like I really am committed to this. And it just needs to be reinvented. I need to switch things up. And that actually felt really good and true at the time. So you're so right. I love exactly what you just said. I had those moments and was able to just really stay rooted in like the why I created this business and just rejigged the way that I was showing up and the way that we were holding our students inside of the experience, et cetera, until it got to the point where it was really clear, okay, this really is no longer the thing that feels true for me to put my devotional energy towards. And it felt like just a total like, wait, what? Because again, so much of the identity was wrapped around this. And it was a shedding of this whole persona of who I had lived into and who I thought I was going to be. And there's so much more woven into this as well, where when my husband and I were talking about wanting to have kids or not, I was so scared that having children was going to burn my business to ground. I thought it was going to ruin it. And I didn't want to sacrifice that because at the time my business was everything to me. And long story short, it's interesting because having my daughter Aislinn was the catalyst of me realizing like, okay, this isn't the thing that I'm really wanting to be devoted to. And yet it's all perfect. So it's so interesting how we can fear something so much. And yet the thing ultimately could happen and it could be the best thing for you. So it's life is a wild ride.
Mm. And this brings us so perfectly back into the concept of a liminal space, right? Because the fear, most of the time, that you're so perfectly describing is I can't picture what else,
Yeah.
who else, right? Like, I know what this is, and I know all the really good things about this, and I know that I like this, and I know that I like who I am here, and there's so much about this that is positive. And it's not that I couldn't be anyone else or couldn't do anything else, but I can't picture it right now. And I
Yeah.
don't know what I would be if not this. And
Mhm.
that unknown, like being willing to unravel with no clear destination of what's next, for most people is the scariest thing, right? We have millennia of evolution in our little brains designed to be completely afraid of the things we can't see and the things we don't know. That's what danger is.
Yes. Yeah.
And so what I what I hear in this and recognize in you and just want to like applaud you for is like a willingness to go into the mystery.
Thank you.
Because people talk about that. And they
Yeah.
talk about like they say it like it's a romance, like surrender. People love to talk about surrender, and you're like, surrender is the most painful,
Yes.
awful, like gut wrenching. And like especially if you got a lot of earth in your chart, y'all. Like we don't like earth or fire. Yeah, we don't like the surrendering. I want to be in control. I want to know what's happening.
Uh-huh. Mm-hmm.
I want to have a plan. I want to know for 100% sure I'm going to be okay.
Yes.
I want to like line item my budget. I want to be on top of my schedule.
All of that. All of that. And there is this part of me that gets off on the unknown and is like, whoa, like, because I think I do love to control so much. And I'm like, I gotta know this and I gotta know that. And then I'm gonna do all these things. And then when it's this like just gotta completely surrender, it's kind of like, oh my God. Oh God, this is scary, but it's kind of kinky and like kind of fun and kind of like, whoa.
I'm so glad you said it because as you were saying this, I was like, oh, this is about to pivot into a bondage conversation. And I'm so excited.
Yeah, but it's true. There's like this like ability to finally just let yourself go, because at least in my experience, and I've gotten better at this over the years, but at least in the beginning, like I did not know how to take breaks. I did not know how to carve out that, yeah, that time to pause. And so to finally like even be forced to, or like to get sick, I'd sometimes look forward to, because I thought that like that was my way to rest, which is so fucked up. And now that's not so much the case, but there's still this like, oh, I can just not have any responsibility. I'm like, I just let go. Like, who knows? Oh, and it kind of hurts, but it feels good to feel all these feelings and this stuff. And then it can get to the point where it's like, okay, but I'm fucking over this. So like there's the, yeah, oh, this feels good, but then there's the, wait, okay, I thought it was gonna be over, wait, this is still going on. Ooh, okay. And so there've definitely been those moments throughout the past like year or two where I've been enjoying it, getting off on it, and then also like, when the fuck does this end? Because I'm usually someone, again, with that earth and that fire, that I get that spark and I'm like, all right, and now we go and now we ride it. And I've gotten a lot of those sparks here and there, and the amount of content and stuff I've created, even behind the scenes, but just haven't released, is so interesting and so unlike me. And I'm just really letting it all simmer and not pushing and not putting like a, okay, by this time, like I need to figure this out. Which is freeing, but is also like, where am I going? I'm not sure. And I think that's okay.
I think that's so important too, because this idea of like, oh, I have to figure it out by this time, that can put so much pressure on the process. And like that can also stalemate your decision making process, or pressure, like create internal pressure to make a decision that later you're like, oh, I don't know for sure that this was really the thing. It was just like the best of the options I had in mind at the time. And I had put this deadline on myself. And so this is what we did. And sometimes, like, everything has nuance and personal experience and context behind it. There are times, I will say this for like my chronic overthinkers, for instance. There are times where sometimes it's beneficial to be like, pick something by Friday and fucking make a choice and move on.
Totally.
And if it's wrong, you'll change it later, but you have to do something.
Yeah,
And then there are
do
other times
something.
that that's not the move.
Right. And that's the thing, is I think in the past, a lot of what I've created has sadly, and this is maybe the Capricorn, but come from a place of, I have to be the best. Oh, they're doing it this way, I'm going to do it better. Or let me prove myself. I'm going to show so and so that, I can be successful. And a lot of that was sadly motivated extrinsically. And of course, some of it came from this internal desire and this excitement and this passion. But I'm realizing even when I'm feeling the like, oh, I'm excited now. A lot of the times I'm seeing, oh, it's in response to like, oh, that person shared this. And oh, I think I could do it in a really cool way. Or and so I'm trying my hardest to, with my emotional authority, especially, see where I'm like getting those excitement bursts. And is it still like there, like 48 hours later, or even a week or two later for me? And if not, like, oh, okay, like I'm just being influenced by these other energies, which is cool and great and can be helpful in some situations, but also just becoming so discerning about what's mine, what's someone else's, the reason and the like root of where this is coming from. And there hasn't been, even I literally almost launched something like last week, and it felt like something that was marinating for almost like 9 months, and I was about to release it. And then I went on this retreat and I was like, I can't release this. Like, it's not it. It's not the thing. And that was so hard because, again, like it felt like this thing had been brewing behind the scenes and I had been teasing it on my stories and everything. And I'm like, no, like that would just, if I shared this now in its form, it would just turn into something that I feel like I would be like, I'm bored with, on to the next thing. And so I, again, don't know when that clear certainty thing is going to come through. And that's really scary, especially for someone who's loves being creative and loves being in like, that's my magic a lot of the time. So it's so bizarre. So bizarre.
I love where we just got to, and I was thinking this as I was hearing you say it, and then you used the word that I was thinking of, which is creative. And I think that something really important here to me, and hopefully for the people who are listening to this, is as a creative and an entrepreneur, right? I am a quote unquote creative entrepreneur.
Yeah.
I am also a creative person. I'm an artist. I am a creative. Like, I love creating. And
Mhm.
I am not just a business owner, but an entrepreneur who have started multiple businesses.
Yes.
I think a hard thing for us sometimes is discerning what's a business and what's a project.
Yeah. And a passion or
Right.
no.
And like what's a business and what's like something I'm just gonna make one time and give away and have people be like, what was that thing? Be like, I don't know, I wanted to make it and I shared it and it's done. And I that was it. Like, I don't we are also kind of in this zeitgeist of like you should monetize everything. I saw, do you know
Yeah.
Michelle Pelazon from Holisticism?
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
She posted on her stories, like, if you've been victimized by the hobby to you should monetize this pipeline, like, you might be entitled to compensation. She's like,
That's
I
so
was bored, so I started knitting. And then it turned out I'm good at knitting. And then next thing you know, everyone's telling me I should start a knitting business. So I started a knitting business and now I hate knitting. And this was the worst idea. We like it, we don't all have to monetize everything we're good at all the time. And then also, like, it is okay to sometimes, even if we do sell it, to create something that we know we're only going to do once and like get out of our system, that's like a little passion project. I think, like, I make books and I still publish them. I make little journals and I make a book called the Master Moon book that's like a year long new moon full moon guided journal. I make them because I love making books and I love books.
Yeah.
And I sell them because they're cool and people like them, but I don't have a book company and I
Mhm.
don't want to start one. It's just like, if I sell 50 of these a year, it's cute and fun and I do it for me because I like it. And I don't think it confuses my audience about what my company is or what I do. Like, we get to both be serious entrepreneurs and serious business people and like sometimes do stuff for fun and just to release it and just to share it and like just to make it.
Mhm.
We're allowed to do that, everybody.
That's, yes, that is such a good reminder. And in total transparency, I think there has been this piece of me that's afraid, like I said or hinted to before, but who am I without the business? Like, am I warranted or allowed in certain circles still now that I don't have this 7-figure business. Yeah, I did, but like not now. It's gone, right? And yeah, it's interesting to think about rooms that I used to be in or things that I used to be a part of. And I'm like, oh, do I not have like access to that anymore because of like this decision to close down a business? And that doesn't feel really good. Like, so do I want to be hanging out with those people anyway? And it's like it's such a mind fuck and an ego fuck around like where does this land me? And so I have found myself feeling like, okay, well, I love being in the room with these creative thinkers, these entrepreneurs, and because I think there's like a certain energy and way about entrepreneurs that I love and creatives. But if I'm in this pause, and if I never decide to be an entrepreneur again, which I would be very surprised about, what does that mean? And so it's just been, yeah, it's been really like a really personal like struggle to navigate and to kind of try to wrap my mind around. And so I find myself like wanting to be back in the scene because I want to be back in those circles, back in those conversations. And so I'm realizing for me, it's not so much even about entrepreneurship. It's about this feeling of belonging. It's about this feeling of being able to create meaningful, deep conversation and connection. And I don't need entrepreneurship to do that, to your point. Like, I don't need this business. I don't need to monetize it. And I don't need to do this to find friends or to find my community. There's other routes, but that had been like my key to unlocking like those doors and those pathways in the past. And so it's yeah, it's really fascinating to just observe that and to see this at play.
I'm about to say something a little shady about the entrepreneurial business world, especially the like feminine business world and the spiritual business world and the self-help business world. I think there's something a little shitty about having the realization that when we're in all those rooms and people are praising our creativity and our ingenuity and our training and our skill and our leadership and our thought leadership and our creativity, all those things. And then you realize, oh no, it was my earning potential, my earning capacity, the number of clients I had. We are all walking around saying, oh, we have you here because you're this thought leader. But really, you have me here because I have a multi 6-figure or 7-figure business and I
Mm,
have a lot of customers and I have a lot of perceived success. And that
yes.
when I no longer have those metrics that we all like are giving lip service to not caring about, I am no
Mhm.
longer invited. And there's such an illusion shattering
Mm,
thing of
mm.
like, no, it is a lot of still just like that old school bro business mentality with a veneer of new thinking on top of it.
Totally, 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 totally. And it's funny because I was journaling around something the other day and just thinking about like who are the people who I genuinely just feel the most connected to, who I would love to invite to just be with me in person for a weekend or a few days or whatever. And the amount of earning, like, it was not even a thing. It was actually people that were my past clients who are no longer in business, who never longer do this. And it's just like, you're so right. And I think it helped me realize like that's not, and I know this, but it's hard to sometimes break away from this conditioning, especially like my very first business coach, we were like in a 200-person program, and every week we would put into a spreadsheet like the amount of people we gained on our list and the amount of money we made, and everyone could see. And you only got invited to like be part of her magazine if you were like one of the top people. And so like that was and it's just like it's so steeped into the way that I've done things, and I'm in the past, and that have repulsed me. And yet I still find myself applying those rules to myself, even if I'm not applying them necessarily to other people. And I'm like, wow, that's fucked up. And of course, there are moments where I'm like, yeah, I have a lot to offer as just me, but there are, just to let all of you in, absolutely these moments. And I just like to be real about it, because I think we can see people who have had a certain amount of success and think that they're a certain way, or I don't know. And the more I have been in the quote unquote room with people, the more and more I realize just how fucking human everyone is. And there should be never be that hierarchy because of earning potential, etc. And yet a lot of the cool experiences I've been a part of have been with some of those mentors, etc., but not all of them. And yeah, it's just I keep saying like it's just so interesting. I just find it also fascinating to just be an observer from a new perspective than I've been in when I was like so ingrained in all of it.
And to me, it's wild because like there's like no greater qualification for expertise. Like there's no one I'd rather talk to or have on a panel than someone who had what everyone wants and walked away from it versus someone who has it right now. Because like what
Totally.
it takes to have the thing that everyone wants and choose to walk away from it. I'm like, "Oh, you know something nobody's talking about. That's the person I want to listen to."
Totally
The
feel you.
people who walk away from fame, the people who are like, I was a movie star and I quit, right?
Mhm.
Like, those are the people I'm like, we need to hear more from those people because their insights on the inside of that industry, the
Yes.
insights you get on the other side of whatever, having the thing, having the dream, having the experience that everyone thinks they want, and being like, oh, it's not only not all it cracked up to be, but I thought I wanted this and I got there and it turned out it didn't give me all the things I thought it would give me. And I had to get so much more deeply intimate with myself and what I want and what I'm in devotion to and make a really hard decision.
Mhm.
That is so much insight, so much character. Like those are the people we should be looking at, following, wanting to hear from.
Totally. I'm so with you on that. And of course, there are people who are doing the thing and living full lives and really like, in their purpose. And so that is absolutely true too. But yeah, for me, I think that there was this realization too that, oh my gosh, like I'm cultivating this magic and creating these incredible communities where people are finding like their best friends and all this. And I did that because like that's really what I wanted for myself. I wanted to create the magic in my life. I wanted to find the meaningful friendships and connections, beyond all this, surface level shit. And oh, wow. I have some of that in my life for sure, but it's not the level that I would expect and deeply know to be true for me. And yeah, so that's been a whole shift over the past year or two as well, as like not making the online world my world and really being intentional about curating and cultivating the relationships, the connection, the magic, etc. in my personal worlds where no one even sees anything. But yeah, like that's what I needed. And it was what I was trying to create, but I was creating it for everyone else and not myself.
Mm. So I know we've already been talking forever. I feel like I could talk to you for 100 years, and I want to like talk. I want to go in a million directions still. But I think what I would love is if you would be willing to kind of give us like a bird's eye view or a little story of the development and the growing of what became the Taboo Institute, and then the decision to close it. Like, what was that like for you?
Okay. In as brief of a story as I can create, as you can probably tell from this podcast episode, I'm a very multi passionate person. And I always, before Taboo, saw myself as like, jack of all trades, so to speak. And I really wanted to claim my position as like master. Like I can be the person for this. And so it really excited me when I had all these modalities under my belt that I had been certified in, I had gone to like trainer level with, and I was like, yes, like I am a master at facilitating transformation. And I have all these epic modalities in my toolkit. And so again, like it felt good from an ego level and it felt good to be able to facilitate this. But I was like, yes, okay, I found my thing and I just wanted to have a thing so badly. And so I finally had my thing and it was a true expression for me. And it felt really fucking good to, yeah, be certifying all these other coaches and these life-changing tools. And
I want to hop
That-
in really, really quick just to say for those of you who don't know about Lexi certification program, because I do think this is an important point in the coaching world, there are only two real certifying bodies. There's the ICF and the ICBP. And you were, is that right? International Board, IBCP,
IBC.
coaches and practitioners.
There are other boards actually outside of that. I would say that yeah, there's some more well-known ones, but there are multiple boards, but there's really no one governing body in the coaching industry. And so that was a whole thing for me that felt so tricky and out of integrity because some of the positions and the rules and the values that some of these boards had and that we were supposed to be in accordance with, like, just did not resonate with me at all. And so we broke away from one of the boards that we were affiliated with, and that created.
Ooh, okay. It was IBCP, right?
Yeah.
What I was going to say was that one of the things that I knew about your program that I always really respected, and one of the reasons that I was tapped in and following your work was because you took the time to make sure that your program, people who were certified for you through you were IBCP standard certified coaches, and that like there are just a lot of unregulated coaching certifications that are somewhat meaningless on the market. And you can go to lots of people's quote unquote training programs and be certified by someone who made stuff up and doesn't have any kind of like
Yeah.
praxis level that has a standard. And so when Lexi is saying she was certifying people, I just want to like hold up for a little bit like the level of rigor of the program
Yeah.
that you had created and the types of coaches you were training.
Thank you. Yeah. And again, that's a whole other podcast episode because I don't believe that even the boards and the certifying bodies that be are the standard because we wanted to go a level above that, even like that to us just didn't feel an integrity. And so that was a whole thing. But we really, yes, we created this incredible body of work that was, you know, really truly just so comprehensive. um and and then we one of the big pivots we had was because we broke away from the board and we really wanted to make it our own even further and create this like next level of mastery and magic and everything within it. But then long story short, becoming pregnant, to be completely honest, changed so much for me and made me just start to like reevaluate things, especially when I was super sick and I didn't have the energy that I had for the output that was needed. And there were so many micro moments that honestly led up to this, but the big thing was that health scare that had me just being like, okay, the doors need to close. But I want to make sure, can you remind me what was your specific question? So I'm looping
Sorry, I
back.
derailed us. Um, was building it and then kind of like what it became and then the decision to close it.
Yeah, I mean, like, I think that's the thing that was so hard is that it became, yeah, it became like a really beautiful program and that was really well known in the industry. And um, so there was that piece of the ego death that had to happen with letting it go. But ultimately, throughout, even like before the health scare situation, my heart like just wasn't feeling 1,000% in it. But I had made a commitment, right? And I had said like, okay, this goes until X date. And we had team on board and everything. And so we're like, we're going to go through the end of this. It could be the ending of this, but we didn't say anything about that. We were doing everything honestly in our power to work so hard at like reviving it, especially on a marketing standpoint. But again, like I said before, when my heart and soul isn't in it, it wasn't working. And we were having team marketing, we were having Facebook ads, and everything was just kind of falling flat. And so little pieces started to crumble. And then with that health scare, it was just so clear that even though we had a certain date in mind when it would come to a complete end, it had to happen sooner. And that was a really, really difficult decision because there were so many different things that we had to do from a client and student management perspective to make sure everyone felt like taken care of. And, you know, didn't feel like we were just running away or anything like that. So we made a lot of time and space to close the container in the most integrity that we could. But it was so hard, and there were so many tears cried, even though it was the right decision. It was something that like really broke me down, and um that I don't think I ever really conveyed publicly, like how difficult it was and how, yeah, how much it devastated me, to be honest.
I'm thinking about, I'm going to use the Gwyneth Paltrow phrase, like conscious uncoupling. I'm thinking about breakups of marriages or long term relationships where, like, you know, it's run its course and there's nothing really wrong and no one's mad at each other. And, like, you just know it's right to move on. And, like, how hard those types of breakups, you know, you hear people talk about, like, it was devastating and it was so hard. And you do have that thing of like, there's nothing wrong on paper. Like everything about this is right, but inside we know it's not anymore. And how hard it is to be in your integrity and make the choice to have an ending of something that other people might not get because it looks right on paper.
Yeah.
And
Mm.
then I you know, not to jump, but the next thing that I saw you put out was in the like sex and relationship space. And not only was it in the sex and relationship space, but it was getting into like kink dynamic stuff. And uh I was all the way here for it and love it. And also, I know as someone who also is very public about, you know, kink and sex and sexuality, I run a strip show. I deal with a lot of whorephobia and a lot of pushback and people like, oh, you're too sexy even in your marketing. Like
Mm.
there's a lot of opinions about
Mhm.
sex and sexuality, especially in the business space.
Yes.
And so not only was it a pivot, I wonder how much of it was a pivot. Like to me, I would think about always when you're pivoting, there's the, oh my God, I'm gonna lose all these followers. When I tell everyone, hey, this Instagram and this email list is moving away from this topic and moving into this topic, that's always scary. You're always like, for a lot of people, they're like, oh my God, I'm gonna lose all these people on my list, and we go through ego stuff with that. And then it's like, and I'm potentially opening myself up to get a lot of responses of people are like, how dare you? You're a mother. Are you ashamed? Like, I can't believe you're doing this. Now I have all these feelings about getting my business education from someone who's talking about sex on the internet. Like, did you get that? Did that happen?
Honestly, not really, but
Oh,
I
that's
think
good.
because I mean, not that I would, there were times before the internet business, or not the internet business, geez, the website business, that I was talking about sex in relationships a lot before that. So I think some people just like knew that was part of my vibe. And I've never been one to like stray away from it. I've always been so drawn to it. Working with sexuality and relationships has been something that I've been deeply devoted to for probably like 8 years now. And it was just time to share more of that on the forefront. And yeah, there were some people that were like, oh, I don't resonate with this message. Like, this wasn't why I followed you. And but there wasn't really, in from what I received, any shaming. um I just I was so unavailable for that. And now that even if you're unavailable for it, it doesn't mean it doesn't happen, because it can totally absolutely happen. But yeah, I don't, and I think the people who knew me knew that it wasn't like that big of a shock, because it had been like an undercurrent of some of my stuff. And my branding, like there were photos of me like kind of sexy, like low shirts, my butt like being revealed. So it wasn't like it was the forefront of my business before, but it always had that like provocative edge, I think. So it was definitely a transition, but it wasn't anything that people were like, oh my God, this is like so not you.
Oh, I'm so glad. I'm glad you didn't get a lot of that because it's something I thought I was like, oh, I wonder if she's getting any, you know, pearl clutching.
No, and like honestly too, I think because in what I was sharing as well is I was taking such a stand for when you become a mother, and everyone's path is different, but this was something that felt so true for me. Like, yes, there was a period where I was like, I do not feel sexy or sexual right now. And like, this is far, I wouldn't say far from my mind, but far from like where I'm at. Um, and then there came a time where I was like, oh, this is going to be something that I take an absolute stand for. That just because you're a mother doesn't mean like you've stopped functioning as a sexual individual. Like, I actually found so much power in motherhood and deepen my relationship and my sex life with my husband to like the next level as a mother. And so I just wanted to be such a strong stand for that because it was a fear of mine. Like, oh, what happens when you become a mom? But I had really done a lot of work with like, that's not my story. And I'm taking a stand for, yeah, you can be a mom and you can be sexy as fuck. And it can be even better than before. So that was really the energy that I was coming into it with. Yeah.
Oh, I love it. Okay. So, my last question, I didn't know this was going to be my last question, but it is.
Oh.
Um, as someone who is so deeply studied and trained in so many coaching and uh, brain changing and nervous system shifting modalities, how do you coach yourself
Mm.
through these decisions and through these hard periods?
Such a great question, and it's constantly changing. I feel like, yeah, I think for me, which is it's so interesting, even with all of these incredible tools and modalities, my like biggest, deepest thing is journaling. Um, there is something that just happens when I put pen to paper, when I'm really honest and raw with myself and I see it on the paper and just having that, I don't know, back and forth with myself, I find to be so powerful, healing, reflective, and everything. So, yes, I pull certain modalities in certain times for sure, but um yeah, it's just so I didn't expect to say that, but it's the truth. Like that to me is such a big one. And I would also say um it's not just me going at it alone. Whatever it is I'm going through, yes, there's some things that I process in my own space, but having people that I trust, that I know can hold me through the emotions, through nervous system regulation, through all of that, is huge. And as someone who used a lot of these modalities in like a silo by myself for so long, it's been so powerful to really let people in and be held in various ways. And so yeah, being in relationship, being in community, being in container, it has been so powerful. And it's not necessarily like a single modality that has shifted it for me when I'm in these things.
Mm, I love it. And I'm a journaler too, and I always think, first of all, like that's where I started. I was a little kid. Like I've been
Same.
journaling since I was a little
Yeah.
kid, and like the basics are the basics, right? Like I feel like there's like these home base ways to get in touch with yourself, and like when you have your those home base ways become the most important during hard times.
Mm,
Um, and I also really want everyone to tap into and hear when you're hearing a master coach or practitioner say, I don't do it by myself. I lean on my coaches, my therapists, my support team, my family, like the other people around me, because one of the things I notice with my clients, and I don't know if you've seen this too, is I attract a lot of I don't want to bother you, I don't want to burden you, high achievers,
mhm.
and
That's
people
me.
who, yeah, isolate, suffer in silence. And that, like, one of the biggest things that I think we learn in doing personal development work is that it's not quote unquote personal development work. It's like learning how to be a person. Like it's learning how to rely on other people and
Yes.
raise your
Yes.
hand and ask
Yes.
for help. The goal is not to be able to now fix every problem without talking to anyone. The goal is learning, when do I need to raise my hand?
Yes, absolutely. That's been such a big lesson for me this past year is I thought I got into this personal development space like just for myself, but it like the real work is in the relationship, is in the, being in community, being a human interacting with other humans. And I will add, even though we said like the therapist and the coach and the partner and the friends, like also getting in circle, like being in sacred circle space and gathering with intention and ritual and ceremony has been, yeah, so deeply healing and nourishing. So it, what I love about all of this too is like you don't need a fancy modality. Like yes, those help. Those absolutely help and they have their magic, but being committed and devoted to certain rituals and to being in community and gathering like that in relationship with people like that makes us human, and it can be that simple. So, yeah,
Yeah, lean on your people, everybody.
lean on your people.
Lean on your people. In elemental entrepreneurship, in my membership, always I remind us that like we're a group of helpers, most of whom don't like ever like sharing that we're vulnerable or asking for help. And I'm like, so we have one of two options. We can have a thriving group full of people volunteering to help each other, or a like completely silent group of burned out practitioners who all feel isolated in their own little rooms, and we
Oh,
get to
how
decide. We get to decide which one we're gonna be. And
fun.
remember, like, think about how excited you are when someone shares that they're having a difficulty and you're like, oh, I can help with that. And how on fire you feel to help someone you like. And that, like, what a gift it is that you're giving to your friends and to your community by bringing a problem to the circle and letting the people who are like, I can help with that. I can lend a hand. I can bring a meal over. I can, right? Like, there's all the, I could help. I could have a conversation. You can DM me. There's all of these ways that I can help, and how great that feels. And then knowing like you're going to have your day where you're the person who's like, oh God, I hate saying this out loud, but guys, I'm struggling. And having everyone else get to come forward for you. Like that is such a healing practice of doing work in group, is just sharing and learning to trust that people will show up for you. I think that that's like the wound that gets healed. It's like, oh, I can ask and people will show up for me and I won't be shamed or judged and won't be held against me later.
Absolutely. Absolutely. 1,000%. And that has been like such a deep lesson. And I'm still learning it in layers, but allowing myself to receive in that way has been such a game changer for me.
Mm. This has been such a delicious conversation. Thank you so much. I also just am so glad we got a chance to talk, and I love you, and we're friends now.
Yes,
And
we are.
um, share with everyone, like, where can they keep in touch with you? Where can they follow you right now so that they can watch this process unfold?
Over at Lexi D'Angelo on Instagram. So LexiDangelo. And yeah, you can find other links over on Instagram, but that's kind of the main place where I'm showing up and sharing. And something might be coming soon, but we'll
But who
see.
knows what it is? You're going to have to follow to find out, everybody.
Follow to find out. Exactly. Open loop right there.
Right now, we're in the fuck around, and we
We're
love
in
the fuck around. We'll have to find out when we find
the
out.
Exactly. I love you. This was so great. Thank you for going in, all different directions with me.
Love it. Thank you so much. Thanks for being here, everybody.
Thank you.